Well, then let's get started with today's episode of Kicking Tables. Vic, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you on to talk about
Hi guys,
Green
great to be here.
Hell, the board game. So,
Yep.
for those who don't know the game, maybe have never played the video game, tell us what the board game itself is all about.
Well, so the board game is like a tabletop reincarnation of the video game with a twist. It's aimed to be a survival game with a campaign and a narrative story that's going to be developing over more or less 12 chapters. It's going kind of parallel to the story of the video game,
Okay.
and so as not to spoil too much for people who haven't played the video game and make it easier to connect to people.
Okay.
It's mostly a kind of, mm, I don't know, based around survival mechanics known
Okay.
from the computer game and some additional ones that made sense during the board game implementation. A lot of crafting, a lot of collecting resources, a lot of worrying about surviving the night, some random encounters, and achieving goals that are well scenario driven.
How long would
All in all,
each chapter of the campaign
yeah.
typically take to play?
One chapter should take around 1 maximum 2 hours to
That's
play if
good.
the team is like, doing it cooperatively and figuring everything out together pretty well.
That's really great. And this is a non-legacy, so you could replay this over and over?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is a non-legacy game, and there are a few branching options in the scenarios. They don't lead you to different storylines, but they enable you to kind of have the game slightly modified in the future scenarios with some events showing up and some events disappearing. So there is replayability value to it. The game, like you said, isn't a legacy game, so no
Mm.
components get destroyed or anything like that. And we're also pondering very strongly about some kind of like a skirmish survival kind of thing where
Oh,
you,
nice.
for
Oh,
example,
nice.
can like set up a map and see how many days you can survive in the jungle before the jungle kills you, basically.
Very
Right?
cool.
Pesky
Yeah.
jungles. Yeah.
Those pesky jungles, exactly.
How closely did you work with the video game developers when developing the board game?
Oh, well, we had a lot of input from the guys from Creepy Jar. That's the company that created the board game, the computer game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It made it easier because they're also based in Poland. They're a company from Warsaw, so they were kind of close by if we wanted to, to communicate with them. They had a lot to say about the visual side of the board game.
Oh, good.
They approved most, if not all, of the graphic designs and the UX components and stuff like that. We've played a few games with them, like the tutorial scenario, the first scenario as well, so that they could feel the mechanics and see if they translate the computer game well. And
Okay.
I might be a bit bragging here, but they were pretty impressed. So.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
what you want to hear, right? Now,
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see them kind of getting into it and seeing their product from a different perspective, like translated into a tabletop module and still working and still having the same feel that they were satisfied with.
yeah. Now, did you want the game to look like the video game as well, visually?
Well, we couldn't really achieve that from the word go, and we knew that in our
Okay.
team because it's an FPS game, right?
Sure,
Where
of
you're
course.
like in the middle of the jungle. We wanted to give the players a feel of being there, but well, it's the map is kind of a top-down view with a lot of foliage and a lot of
Okay.
like kind of drop-down photos, like looking like a satellite picture. When you reach a tile where something interesting is happening, like there are enemies or interactions, then the graphics, the artworks zoom in to this like particular area so that
Okay.
you see the problem, right?
That's cool.
But we wanted to translate more the mechanics from the game because they're really cool. If you play the computer game, you manage your backpack, you manage how much water, how much food, how much supplies you have, and everything like that. And we wanted that to give this feel of survival because this is the thing that you worry about the most playing the computer game. You've got it all the time in the back of your head. Do I have enough water? Do I have enough of
Right.
this and that to help me survive? So we were going for that mostly when translating the looks of the computer game. But we also used, the same fonts, the same component images, or at least similar component images and stuff like that. So, if you see a coconut from the computer game, it's similar to the one that we have in like a water bottle and stuff like that. So yeah, we were trying to be as close to the source material as possible without it limiting us too much when it comes to, to using the mechanics.
Well, you bring up a really good point with the, you have a very unique mechanic in the game with managing inventory,
Yeah.
even crafting, managing your backpack. Talk a bit about how that works in the board game.
Well, I had a very big part of time in my life when I played a lot of role-playing games, board games like Descent and all of those dungeon crawlers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I loved those things, and I always wanted to make a game where you have like a developing story on a map that's generated from like pieces and stuff, and we achieved it here, I hope. But it always annoyed me that when you come to inventory in those dungeon crawlers, you've got just like, the manual says to you that, well, you can have only 2 cards of weapons, and you can have only 1 card of armor, and you can have only 2 cards of this and that, and that rolls everywhere. Gloomhaven, what you get everywhere, the inventory system is the same. Yeah. And we felt that this is something that has to be a bit deeper here in Green Hell, because in the computer game and in survival mechanics in real life as well, managing your backpack, what you can fit in there, how much you can carry and everything, it's just not a number game. It wouldn't feel real. So we created those, like I came up with this idea of those Tetris blocks, like polyminos or whatever they're called. I don't know the professional name for those, right? Yeah. And we gave you a grid, and you have to figure out if you want to take 5 rocks and a few sticks with you, or a few pieces of bone from an animal that you've hunted. You have to kind of fit it into the backpack. That's so cool. It fits into the limited room that you have. So it's not only like, well, you can have 2 bones and 5 sticks and that's it, dude, right? And this is like an abstract thing. It's more visceral. You need to manipulate, and you need to, it's a puzzle in itself to figure it out. So that's cool. It kind of sinks into the survival mechanic here very well.
And what about the crafting? How does that work in the game?
Well, crafting is like you've got recipes, right, that translate into items. After you collect some resources, you can basically spend some energy, spend some time in the jungle to craft an item. You can upgrade those items later. Those tiles are also like Tetris shape with different weird shapes, because sometimes when you need your hands free to carry stuff to your camp, like, some big rocks or some leaves that, well, logically, like in real life, wouldn't fit into a backpack that you have on your back, right? You wouldn't be carrying a whole suit of armor in an RPG game in a backpack. You won't carry 5 boulders in a backpack as well.
Unless it's a magical backpack.
Well, yeah, unless it's like Terry Pratchett's luggage, right? Where it just like swallows everything and stuff. But yeah, but here, so sometimes you need to put those weapons that you have in your hands into your backpack, and that means that you have to have room in the backpack for those as well. So they're also weirdly shaped, and you have to manipulate around to, stuff it in there. And, well, you've got a few tiers of those weapons and of those items, so they modify your strength, and they also kind of pitch into this resource gathering, because you can't gather all of the resources like from the word go. You need to craft a blade if you want to gather like bones from animals, or if you want to portion the meat that you collect. You have to craft an axe if you want to, I don't know, obtain some logs, because you need to cut them with an axe. You just can't use your hands to do that, right?
Right.
So it's kind of all in there, and it's all pretty well connected. We didn't want to like overwhelm the players with like a huge list of items and a huge list of resources, so we need to limit it a bit so that it becomes manageable, and the upkeep isn't taking too long during the game. But we feel we have this kind of sweet spot where the amount of items and the resources kind of clicks together pretty well right now.
That's cool. Give us an idea. What's a sample campaign chapter look like? Like in chapter 1, what are you doing in the game? What is your goal?
Yeah, well, the first chapter is all about this crew. This is kind of a search and rescue team that are looking for one guy in the jungle in particular. So the first thing is that they located the camp that he left behind, and they see that the camp is like in complete wreckage. It has to be rebuilt. They want to make it their base of operation for the time being. So first things first, you have to collect some resources and rebuild the camp so that you can use it
Okay.
at least, so some basic buildings. Then you need to investigate the locations on the map where the guy was, where your target was headed last, because you
Okay.
found his notes and you know where he was. And then as you reach those locations, you find out the following steps of the plot. You go deeper into the jungle, you find out that you're, well, not alone, not to give too many spoilers here,
Sure.
and from that it goes on and on. So some steps in those chapters are like, collect this much resources and craft some stuff.
Okay.
Some are just reach a tile on the map and interact with it. Some are completely different because they require you to interact with this potion that the natives in the jungle call ayahuasca. This is this potion that gives you some visions, or gives you in a state of intoxication.
Okay.
And this is also kind of a mechanic in the game where you
Nice.
create this potion, and it alters your stats for a few days, for a few game turns, and you have to deal with that because your stats can be suddenly reduced, for example.
Oh,
It's a
random.
complete random thing. Is
Okay.
you don't Yeah, you don't have one recipe for this potion because only the natives have it, right? You know the ingredients, but you have to guess what the proportions are. And if you brew a wrong potion, then, well, if you drink it, you need to test it on someone, right? And it can kick your ass, or it can help you out. So there is this element of randomness there. And sometimes you will have to backtrack through a piece of the map because you will find out that something you need is in a location that you visited a scenario ago or two, and you will need to get back somewhere
Yeah.
there, and you will need to plan your trip just to just to survive and to get there, retrieve
Okay.
something, and
That's
so
cool.
forth and so on. So there are a few ideas here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for people, like, is it necessary to have played the video game in order to be able to really get into this, or are people who are going to be able to sort of get a good grasp of the story just from playing the board game?
Well, that's a great question. We are trying not to touch upon the plot of the video game
Okay.
at all, almost, right?
Okay.
So the only thing that's connected to the video game is the name and surname of the main protagonist from the video game, and the information that you are searching for this guy.
Okay.
Okay.
And why you are searching for him, and what happens when you find him or not. We're going to make our own kind of version of this in our game, but it's not going to be like in opposition to the computer game. It's not going to be like a complementary story. It's a separate story all along. So you don't
Okay.
have to play Green Hell, the computer game, if you don't really want to.
So depending on your
Okay.
actions, you're going to create an alternate timeline.
Yeah, well, like it's not an alternate timeline. It's like something that happens
It's a
after the
concurrent.
events from the computer
Yeah.
game, or
Okay.
somewhere between them. And you haven't heard about it in the computer game because this wasn't happening there, so you weren't aware of this. But
Gotcha.
this was happening in the background in the jungle somewhere, right? So some people were searching for this guy, and this is their story.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. So it's there. It's in the universe, but it's
Yeah,
separate, a separate story.
Right.
yeah, exactly that.
What kind of process did you go through translating a video game into a board game? How difficult was that?
Ooh, it's hard to go like list everything step by step in this because it included so many elements.
Hmm.
First things first, not everybody on the team was familiar with the computer game. I was familiar only with like the first few hours of playing. So we played a ton of hours of Green Hell, the computer game. We read the whole wiki on the board on the computer game as well, to know what the plot is, to know what all the twists are, and how the story goes, to understand how the crafting works in the computer
Right.
game, what the survival mechanics are.
Okay.
And then we started thinking, which elements from the computer game can we really move to the table so that they are not cumbersome, and that they work well, and which ones do we really need so that the feel of the computer game is still there.
Yeah.
And after we've decided, we started figuring out the mechanics of how we can, create player actions and how we divide the turns and how we do the crafting and how we do the survival mechanics and so forth and so on. So it was like we started with a top-down view, with this most general view of making a list what we need or what we think we need.
Right.
Then we started translating everything into the board game world, and then if something didn't really click, we sat down, all of us, and we were like asking ourselves, why doesn't it work? And can we make it better? Can we make it work? Or do we just scrap this idea completely because it's like, it's a waste of time to try and force ourselves to get it included, right? How important it is, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That must have been a really tough job at the beginning. Hey, guys, come on in. We're going to play a video game for the next week.
Yeah. It was incredibly, time consuming, and it took a lot of effort. Well, to be honest, I would say that it did, because in Green Hill, the computer game, you die like every 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a survival game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a survival game. It's a tough one at that. So the guys from Creepy Jar did a good job there, and we knew that we want to get this feeling of danger and of this imminent death into the board game as well. But we knew that if we made a board game where you set it up for like 10 minutes on your table only to find out that after 20 minutes you die and you have to start from the beginning, then that would probably not sell very well.
No, not at all.
So we needed to make it a bit lighter on the players, but still demanding enough and challenging enough for them to feel that they are really surviving.
Yeah,
you want the tension. The tension still.
Yeah, for sure.
So your campaign is coming up soon. I want to ask you, do you have stretch goals set up, or is the game pretty much done as is, or are you going to have some options for when you get further funding?
Well, we've got the game in a place where we really like how it plays. We're doing tests all the time right now and like tweaking the mechanics and the recipes and everything. But we have some ideas of what else we could stuff in this game to make it better versus the cost of production and everything like that. So we have a few stretch goals planned. It's not like without those stretch goals the game will be unplayable or anything like that, because we're delivering a good ready-made product that we want to be satisfied with. But we have some additional ideas that can spice it up a bit or give a few more tweaks or options or something like that. So we're planning for a few stretch goals very optimistically.
Awesome.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, we have our next segment here is the segment we like to do called our lightning round, where we want to get to know you a little bit outside of your own game, your board gaming habits, board game night stuff. So we've got a couple of questions, rapid fire, just first thing that comes off the top of your head, all right?
Yep.
All right, purchasing games, local game store or online?
Local game stores, if I can find the games that I need, really.
Okay. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Marvel? There's a lot of Marvels lately.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I'm Marvel too. So, game you always win.
Civilization, the old one from Sid Meier's.
Nice. Yep.
From Fantasy Flight Games.
All right. Your favorite childhood game?
Ooh, Talisman, the old edition from. It was called
Pegasus.
Magic and Sword in Polish. Yeah,
Okay.
or Sword and Magic or something like that.
At Pegasus Games, I think.
Yeah. Games
All right.
Workshop did the publishing on that, from what I remember as well.
Oh, cool. All right. Legacy games. Destroy the components or preserve them?
Hopefully preserve them,
Okay.
if possible.
All right. Game you love but always lose?
Oh, that's a tough one. Always lose. Wait, I'm looking at my shelf of games right now, because always lose, but I still love it. That would probably be Anachrony.
Okay.
All right. Science fiction or fantasy?
Fantasy. Big
Fantasy?
Pratchett fan.
Nice.
All right. So, and Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Fair enough.
All right.
Awesome. We always like to get to know our guests outside their own games. That was great. But Vic, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Before we let you go, what's something you really want our audience to know about Green Hell, the board game, and why should they back this game?
There is a lot of heart and a lot of effort that's being put into Green Hell being the board game that we really want it to be, and hopefully the fans and the followers and the people who are backing it will be able to experience and understand it. We're really aiming at being very honest about how the game is and what the game expectations are. So, because, well, this is our first project, right? So we're banking a lot on the trust of people who are looking closely at that, and hopefully we will gain the trust of as many people as we can in order to fulfill the dream and make this board game a reality. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's probably the biggest message and the biggest wish that we have, so that we gain the confidence of as many people as possible here too.
Awesome. And of course, it comes to Kickstarter very soon. There is a link in the show notes below, so go check that out. Click on the button to be notified when it goes live. Vik, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Green Hell, the board game. I'm excited. Good luck with your campaign.
Thanks. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope that you will find the link in the description and click it and follow the campaign for Green Hell, the board game, and we're excited to be able to deliver this game to you in the future. And remember to subscribe to OMG Nexus. The button to subscribe should be somewhere below here. See you on Kickstarter very, very soon.